We are back again for Bleach Mondays as we begin my discussion of Bleach episode 4, which is titled Kill the Shadow. Now this episode covers material that is spanning from chapters 495 to 499, as it adapts a total of 5 chapters worth of material into the 20-minute span of this episode. Now episode 4 in particular begins with the QUINCY's invasion of the Soul Society, as it picks up from the events of episode 3. Now it's for this reason that this episode begins with a 2-minute recap of the events that occur between episodes 1 to 3. It's an impactful reminder before we cut into the action that begins with the QUINCY's invasion of the Soul Society. Now this recap features some incredible new music by Shiro Sagisu, as it helps you to feel psyched up for the events of this new episode. A lot of the key information that was relayed to us by this Aizen doppelganger Kajomaru is actually narrated during this recap, as we see various scenes of Kilge versus Ichigo, with Uryu learning about the QUINCY history, along with Yhwach arriving within the Serite and beginning the attack on the Soul Society. Of course, you have the Shinigami reacting to the invasion, with all of the different Sternritters appearing and revealing their identities, as Hashward declares that the time has come to purge all of the Shinigami. Now this of course was the last scene that we had seen at the end of episode 3, and this now perfectly takes us into the start of episode 4. After the opening, we begin with the final page of chapter 494, which adapts the Soul Society's Research and Development Institute analyzing the catastrophic invasion that is unfolding above them within the Serite. They report on the casualties as we see firsthand the bloodshed and violence that is being caused by the QUINCY. Quite notably, the spiritual pressure of Kira is said to have disappeared, as we cut to a gruesome shot of him lying in his own blood with his arm severed. Now in my last episode review, I did state that we will be now kicking off the intensive battles within the arc, along with seeing more of this uncensored violence which the anime staff are not holding back on showing, as the anime version actually has more blood and gore than the manga in some instances, as you get to appreciate the merciless violence and the true horror that the QUINCY are inflicting upon the Shinigami. We then see Hashward confront the 13th Division as he swiftly eliminates Kojomaru, everyone's favourite Aizen lookalike. His blood spills out as it spells the title of this week's episode, Kill the Shadow, as we begin on a very violent note. We then see a hell butterfly flying towards Rose, and I love how the anime version of the Thousand Year Blood War arc is paying particular attention to hell butterflies, kind of hinting that the Thousand Year Blood War arc may not be the final Bleach anime arc, giving us some sort of hope for a Bleach anime hell arc hopefully. Now this hell butterfly actually appears before the Captain Rose, who ends up being confronted by the Sternritter Nanana. The Sternritter threatens him that he will be defeated within 5 minutes, leaving him no time to mourn the supposed loss of his lieutenant Kira. But Rose is pretty adamant that he is going to fight back and not let the QUINCY get away with everything that they have done. After this, we actually get a first proper glimpse of a character who I have personally wanted to see adapted into anime form for the longest while. We are finally introduced to the Fear himself, the Sternritter Asnod, as he brutally impales several Shinigami. There is this suffocating, ominous dark atmosphere with the blue light of his reishi that is reflecting off of the rubble around the Shinigami, and the piercing blue reishi needles of Asnod that pin several Shinigami in the air who are screaming endlessly. Now this truly captures the fear that he embodies and he inflicts onto others. Now one by one, we are introduced to each of the unique Sternritters who serve as the main enemies of this story arc. These QUINCY soldiers are Yhwach's most trusted and powerful subordinates. Now while the Shinigami are cowering in fear, Renji arrives onto the battlefield as he encourages his underlings for rightfully stating that the Shinigami exist to preserve the Serite, not their own lives. The duty of a Shinigami is to give their life in order to protect the Soul Society. Now this is where Renji confidently challenges Asnod, as we then cut to the best QUINCY girl Bambietta, who is wiping the floor with several Shinigami. That is until she is stopped by Komamura. Now her voice actor flawlessly delivers one of my favourite Bambietta lines here, where she expresses her surprise that the Soul Society would recruit a doggy like Komamura as a captain. Now this line always cracks me up in the manga, and it's a joy to hear and see it in anime form. We then see each of the captains facing off against their respective Sternritters, as we then cut back to Renji clashing with Asnod, as we learn that his attacks are ineffective because of Asnod's Blutveen ability, which is visually conveyed in the anime in this very impressive manner. You get to really appreciate the detail of the blue particles that are radiating off of Asnod's skin with each clash, and additionally there's this blue vein-like pattern that appears on his skin that indicates that he is using the defensive blute to protect himself from being cut. Now when Byakuya appears to protect Renji from the Sternritter Master Masculine, we get to finally see his Senbon Sakura petals updated in the new anime style, and there's this blinding beautiful pink light that perfectly complements the aesthetic and beauty of his power. I have to admit, Byakuya's powers have never looked this good in any other anime adaptation. Now Renji informs Byakuya that their swords are unable to break the defenses of the enemy, but Byakuya proves him wrong by successfully cutting Asnod's arm with his petals. He also manages to break the floor beneath Mask as he falls into the ground, letting Byakuya and Renji now focus on Asnod for the time being. Now after this, we get an incredible anime only fight sequence that had me jumping with joy as Byakuya begins his attack against Asnod. He uses his powers to defend himself from an attack as he then uses his Shikai against the Sternritter. He then defends a few more attacks as he charges towards Asnod after Renji has wrapped his sword around him, which allows Byakuya to fire a burst of petals across Asnod's upper body. Now this was absolutely incredible, and none of this is in the manga, and it is confirmation that we are getting what we were promised via these additional fight scenes and extended fight sequences. We then get this visually stunning anime exclusive scene of Asnod using Blutveen on his eyeball to protect himself from Byakuya's petals. We then cut to Bambietta vs Komamura as the battle is also given more breathing room within the anime via some exclusive extended fight scenes, as we see the two exchanging blows, including Bambietta firing this really cool blue sphere towards Komamura as he cuts it into two and it explodes in front of him. Then we finally get to see a battle that was not properly shown within the manga, and it is given some additional love as we see Kangdu vs Hitsugaya. The Sternritter launches himself towards the captain with his claws. He then freezes Kangdu's arm as he tells the Quincy that they have killed countless of their comrades, and they will not let their acts go unpunished. It is during this anime exclusive fight scene that Hitsugaya notes the hardening ability of Kangdu and how it is very difficult to break through his defenses because of it. Now this is yet again another anime only moment that makes me fall in love with the anime version of this arc. Now while they have cut content from certain areas of the manga, for the most part it is all unnecessary stuff, and actually it does very little to affect the flow of the story. Now additionally, we even get to see Soifon battle against BG9 as she tries to use her Shikai against him, but it is ineffective. We learn that the captains are all struggling to battle the enemy with just their Shikai alone, as the Quincy's defenses are emphasized more within the anime, as in the manga it was only really emphasized by Renji that the Quincy have really impenetrable defense. However, the anime has each of the captains learn about this firsthand as they use their Shikai against the different Sternritters. Now following Soifon's battle, Byakuya is shown to have first decided to use his Bankai, as he believes that learning about how they seal Bankai and breaking their method is the key to their battle against the Quincy. All four of the captains end up activating their Bankai, as Byakuya's Senbon Sakura Kageyoshi looks absolutely amazing within the anime. Now we had seen this very brief moment within the trailers leading up to the first episode's release, but having to see Byakuya's Bankai again in this episode is absolutely amazing. You see all of these countless petals that are animated on screen, you see the lens flares that accompany the towering swords that disintegrate into the petals behind him, and I'm going to say it again, this is the best that Byakuya's Bankai or his abilities have ever looked. Now the Bankai of the other captains are not really given as much love, as it's pretty much just them calling out their release command and a visual show of them having their Bankai activated. One thing I will say is that the capturing of the Bankai is depicted incredibly within the anime. It is like their Bankai is being absorbed into this vortex-like black hole, with the visual effects playing a large part in emphasizing what is actually going on. And additionally, the music in the background during this scene adds to the emotional impact, as the violin cries out while Byakuya states that the enemy don't just seal Bankai, they actually steal it. Each of the captains react to their Bankai no longer functioning, as they can no longer hear their Zanpakuto. And holy crap, my favorite moment of this episode was Rangiku calling out the Tentekura with a new updated version of the iconic Bleach OST Soundscape to Adore playing in the background, as we cut to the captains learning about the Quincy being able to steal their Bankai. We then cut to Shunsui facing off against the Sternritter Robert Acutron, as he also admits that it is not possible to defeat the enemy without Bankai. Now the anime does a fantastic job of conveying the dire stakes here. The Shinigami have no proper method of countering the Quincy, and all hope is in fact lost. Now this is further cemented when we see one of the most powerful Shinigami, Shunsui, lose one of his eyes against the Sternritter Robert. Now later, Renji does attempt to use his Bankai against Asnod, but Byakuya stops him, refusing to allow his Bankai to also be stolen. This leads to Renji exclaiming, how on earth are they supposed to fight back against them? As we cut to more bloodshed all across the Serete, as Akon within the Research and Development Institute is left with no choice but to request to speak to the substitute Shinigami Ichigo, who had once before saved the Soul Society from the threat of Aizen. Now Akon calls through to Urahara within Hueco as he says that Ichigo is currently busy battling the leader of the Hueco hunting party, as we learn that Kilge has tried to unsuccessfully seal Ichigo's Bankai, and additionally Urahara is aware that the Soul Society is currently under attack, and the fact that Akon has contacted him must mean that things are not going well. We then cut to Ichigo vs Kilge, which looks so fluid and dynamic. There are several shots of both of them hurtling through the air and it looks so amazing. Ichigo has the upper hand in this battle as the frustrated Kilge wonders how on earth Ichigo is surpassing him. Kilge ends up being attacked after Ichigo successfully taunts him, causing him to lower his defenses, and this allows Urahara to shut him up and to pass the phone to Ichigo, so that he can head to the Soul Society via a Senkaimon that Urahara has constructed. Now while on his way to the Serete, Ichigo is being briefed by Akon, while Urahara tells Chad and Orihime to find Kilge's medallion. Meanwhile, Urahara tells Chad and Orihime to find Kilge's medallion, so that they can begin researching about how they steal Bankai. Urahara interrupts the discussion between Ichigo and Akon as he relays 3 key points that he has learnt about the Quincy and their powers and abilities. The first is that the Quincy have a transformation called the Quincy Holy Form. The second is that they have a power called BLEACH. And the third most important point is that the Quincy possess a ability to steal Bankai, as he confirms that there is something special about Ichigo's Bankai that is preventing them from stealing it. They are then interrupted by the return of Kilge, who blocks Ichigo's exit and imprisons him within a cage, and he also inflicts some serious injury to Orihime and Chad, as they both have gaping holes through their body, with Urahara also receiving an arrow to the back. Now this episode ends as he reveals that he was ordered by Yhwach not to let Ichigo go to the Soul Society, even at the cost of his own life. Now this brings us to the end of the 4th impactful episode of Bleach's 1000 Year Blood War arc. In all honesty, I am speechless after everything that I've just witnessed. There were some incredible additions made to this episode, including the scenes involving the captains who had had their Bankai stolen being given more of a spotlight, as they were all shown to have used their Shikai against the enemy, and it didn't just cut to them having their Bankai stolen like how it was done within the manga. Ultimately, it was things like this that we had all wanted from the anime adaptation of this arc. Now this was a very strong episode in my opinion, which featured anime exclusive scenes that fit into the story and complemented the plot, while also having several scenes cut out and some scenes changed around, but overall it didn't affect the story at all. And in my next video, which you can expect tomorrow, I will be deep diving into a complete breakdown and analysis of this episode, comparing it to the 5 manga chapters that it adapts for my manga versus anime series. So definitely subscribe and stick around to the channel, and you don't want to miss it because there's a lot to dive into. There's several additional scenes that were included, there were several scenes that were cut, and there were some changes made to the order of how events are taking place here. Now lastly, thank you for making it to the end of this video, and I can't wait to see you in my next Bleach video.